I hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for being here and investing your time. We have a lot to cover today, so we want to get started. Just as a reminder, we are being live streamed and viewed by the public, so keep that in mind with all your comments and behavior. Don't slouch. Make your mom proud. She sees you sitting up straight if she's watching. Also, if you make a comment, make sure to use your microphone and that the light is green when you speak, and that'll help with the streaming as well. All right, we have a bit of a long meeting today, just with all the presentations and the great information we're going to hear. But we will do a break in there, so make sure you plan accordingly. Just ask for your attention throughout and then use the break to your advantage. Before we get started, I want to have a recognition today. Greg Persinger has raise your hand one more time so we can all see you. You have been a great asset to this board for over 9 years, right? What year did you start with the board? Fantastic. So you've seen a lot of things over the years in a dozen years, and just appreciate the input that I've witnessed and insightful questions and good input and advice to all of the members of the board and all of the people who have presented, and making sure that we're holding folks accountable. So I want to thank you for that. The governor would also like to recognize you with this plaque. So if you'd come forward. This just says, in recognition of your many years of exemplary service and dedication to the Tennessee Workforce Development Board, we honor your exceptional leadership in helping shape the future of Tennessee's workforce development system. Governor Bill Lee. Okay, excellent. Thanks so much, Greg. Now I think it's time for a roll call. So Eiler, if you would do that for us, it'd be great.
Absolutely. Good morning. As I call your name, please confirm your attendance audibly. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. And if you are representing by proxy this morning, please state your name for the record. Martha Axford. Thank you. Brandy Faust. Brandy Faust for State Senator Paul Bailey. Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker. Present. Jason Bates. Present. Tim Berry.
Present.
Sarah Noel for State Representative Clark Boyd. Ronnie Brewer.
Present.
Mayor Kevin Brooks. Jonathan Cantrell. Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell-Street for Commissioner Clarence Carter.
Suzanne Carr here as proxy for Deputy Campbell-Street.
Michelle Falcone. Present. Ben Ferguson.
Present, Southwest.
Bill Godwin.
Present.
Marshall Graves.
Present for the Southeast.
Ann Hatcher. Christine Hopkins.
Present for Southern Middle.
Rick Isaacson.
Present.
J. Paul Jackson.
Proxy Kevin Vaughn.
Assistant Commissioner Mandy Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff McCord.
Present.
Vonda McDaniel.
Present.
Mayor E.L. Morton.
Present.
Policy Director Tony Nicknajad for Governor Bill Lee. Stuart Price,
Present.
Barry Ray,
Present.
Director Ann Thompson for Commissioner Bob Rolfe,
Jenny McCabe, proxy for Ann Thompson, who's proxy for Commissioner Rolfe.
Thank you.
Double proxy.
Chief of Programs Jean Luna for Commissioner Penny Schwinn,
Matthew Spinella, proxy for Jean Luna, present.
Kyle Spurgeon,
Present.
Jeff Vance, Kevin Vaughn,
Present.
Rusty Vi,
Proxy Kevin Vaughn.
Ron Wade.
Present, Greater Memphis.
Chairman Barry, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Eiler. Okay, so hopefully you have reviewed the minutes from the last meeting. Would I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Thank you, Martha. Do I have a second? Second, Christine? Thank you. Any discussion about the minutes or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved. All right, Commissioner McCord, what would you like to share with the group this morning?
Thank you, Chairman. The first thing I'd like to do is make an introduction. Is Jonathan Hayes here? Jonathan, raise your hand or stand up. Jonathan is legal counsel for all things WIOA, so he is your friend, and you'll be seeing him around. I just wanted to make sure that you knew who that was. Thanks, Jonathan. I think the second thing that's, I guess we continue to live in interesting times on our workforce environment, and I know a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion, a lot of speculation around our potential OSHA mandate on vaccinations. And really, guys, what we know right now is the courts are going to decide. And so we have, Tennessee has joined, Attorney General has joined a number of other states to sue, to get a stay for that, in addition to multiple other states. And so we'll see. I don't really have a time frame for that, but once again, it's in the court system, and we'll react and adjust accordingly. It's incumbent upon us, though, to communicate as soon as we do know, and be as clear as this can allow us to be in the environment that our businesses are in. And so we're just a wait and see mode, but I assure you that we're also running through scenarios, what if scenarios, depending on that outcome. In the meantime, we're in what can only be described, I'm always cautious of the word crisis, but we're certainly in a labor shortage. Struggles continue to be. It's a product of several things, including demographics and just some slowness to return to work. And so part of our strategy, and you'll hear it today, is to connect to folks, to populations, to groups who we haven't always connected to efficiently before. So you think of your adult ed population, you think of your military transition, you think of work-based learning, you think of our ability now to have apprenticeships, which we didn't have that ability 2 or 3 years ago, and our move towards state apprenticeship agency. All those are working to address this issue of if we continue to try to hire from other states, we get into a zero-sum game. And so we need to work hard to grow our pot, so to speak, grow our basket of folks, which presents a lot of opportunity in the calamity, because our board has been working to reach those folks, including Reentry, just involved for a long time. And so now on the demand side, we're not asking for altruism, we're helping to solve a business need, which will be very sustainable if and when, as we work on that, when we get to where we need to be. So in the mix of the uncertainty, there's some certain things that we are doing, and I think you'll hear a lot about that today. And last thing I'll say is, thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. I know this is not your full-time job, but it's necessary for us to be effective as an agency and as a state. And so we're greatly, greatly appreciative. Chairman?
Very good, thank you. All right, our first report today is unemployment insurance. And so our good friend, Assistant Commissioner Rusty Feltz, will be presenting. Come on up, Rusty.
Actually, Chairman, I'm going to stay right here. We
Hey, that's
decided to-
fine too.
I'm going to be a part of the group today.
All right.
Instead of kind of being the outsider, I'm going to be a part of the group. I'm going to give a real quick update on unemployment insurance that I feel like everybody should know about these three subjects. The first thing we're going to talk about is sort of that proverbial elephant in the room, the legislation that just resulted from the General Assembly doing their special session, and that involves the unemployment aspect and component of separations due to failure to be vaccinated and all that involves. And it's not just our TOSHA division, as Commissioner McCord mentioned. It will involve unemployment insurance and how we will go forward. There is a lot up in the air. I think it goes without saying at a state level. And then there's even a conversation that going on about how that could change at a federal level with our guidance. So what we're going to do is the best thing I can tell anybody working in an AJC or having to do with employers or unemployed claimants due to that component is this: have them file for unemployment and let us make the decision based on the laws and the rules that we're given at that time. If those change, we'll go back, we'll do whatever we're asked to do, but the best guidance we can give them is really none other than just file the unemployment claim and give us all the facts. So the next subject is, I just wanted to let everybody know that UI, the Unemployment Insurance Division, is in the middle of an RFP process to replace our old tax system, and that RFP is ready. We are waiting to put that RFP out because we are almost ready with the RFP for a new benefit system where we are going to try to remodernize and be one of the best in the country in that aspect. So there's a lot up in the air with that, but we have partnered with a national company called Gartner, and we're proud of that partnership. They're bringing a lot to the table, a lot of knowledge about these procedures and things of that nature. And we will be reaching out in the next couple of years as we move forward with the selection and the procurement and then the development process. We will be reaching out to a lot of our workforce partners to say, how can we be better from your aspect? What do you see from the public? We even envision involving the public from that standpoint to say, is our system friendly? Because ultimately that's our customer. So we'll keep everybody abreast of that. And then lastly, I think on a real positive note, which I haven't been able to say a lot of positive things over the last year and a half, all of our numbers in unemployment insurance are decreasing rapidly. Our backlogs in pending claims, our backlogs in appeals, all of those things that we're having to do now that we're months removed from the pandemic, unemployment ending, we're making a lot of progress in that regard. But lastly, I think it's worth noting our legislative tickets and our customer service tickets are the lowest that they have been in almost 2 years, I'm glad to say, and they are decreasing every single day. And I think that speaks to the partnership that we have with you all. People come in these AJCs and they need help, and we've set up a virtual aspect to get together and answer questions and do things like that. But we couldn't have gotten to that point without a lot of hard work from our division and a lot of hard work in partnership from your division. So that's it for me today. Thank you for having me. And Chairman Barry, if anybody's got any questions, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot with one.
Yes, sir.
We talked about, obviously, it's great news that, less people are on unemployment. That means they're getting back to work. But we talked just briefly about people who have just taken themselves out of the workforce altogether, and so they're not employed and they're not on benefits. So put you on the spot, and if you don't know the number, that's fine. But would you have any idea how many people are just no longer in the workforce? Do we have a percentage?
It's about, let me help you here, Rusty.
Yeah, thank you,
I
sir.
gotcha. It's about 140,000 people who are classified as unemployed, 140, 150. Before the pandemic, it was 130. And so that number is normalizing. And again, I think when you hear the term unemployed, you automatically think unemployment insurance benefits to the unemployed, but that's not necessarily true. I just happen to know this number. At the beginning, we had 130,000 before the pandemic who were unemployed, and I believe we had 17,000 continuing claims. And so we are approaching those same levels right now. I think one of the things that we've seen is the demographic piece. Baby boomers have left the building, and we haven't been creating population. We have population decline, so that working age population is not as big. So every time somebody drops out, it's even more, it exacerbates the issue even more. And so got to grow the labor force participation. So anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know. But
No, it's
I'm sure
exactly
Rusty
where I
knew
was
that
headed
too.
with
He
it,
just
yeah.
was waiting for.
Actually, I'm super glad he took over right there. He has saved me a lot over the last year and a half. He just lets me do my thing, and then he kind of does the boundaries for me.
No, that's fine. Are there other questions for Rusty that Jeff can answer for him?
I actually do have one, if I
Yeah,
could.
please.
So my question has to do with that 140,000. You mentioned the word demographic. Do the demographics look the same as far as the age of these individuals that are not working compared to what they were before?
Ronnie, I don't know that, but we can certainly look at that. My assumption would be roughly the same, but I don't know whether that, but I can tell you it's probably people without a high school education. There might be some folks who, the same thing's probably there. That's a huge determinant of whether somebody's employed. But we can look at it and see.
Again, I don't know, I can't back this up, but a hunch is, like you mentioned, people in the boomer category who had a bit of a taste of retirement because of a furlough or a, layoff or something, they said, this feels pretty good, better than I thought it would. And
That's
so-
what the research would say, and the research says that we have more wealth, those folks have more wealth than ever in history, so they have the option of leaving and not participating. And so that's been coming for a long time. It's been coming for the last decade that we knew that our workforce was aging and they're going to move out, and it really just accelerated that piece of it. And again, we don't have as many people coming back. And we saw that with the skills gap, but now we see it with a person gap. And so, again, I think what you're going to hear today is a lot of the efforts to go to grow the pie bigger as opposed to get into a zero-sum game with, recruiting against people and that sort of thing. So I know that happens at the employer level. It can happen at the state level too. And so anyway, that's a lot of what we'll do. Again, a lot of opportunity there, a lot of stuff that we've been wanting to do. A lot of good things happen when somebody's able to connect to employment, and a lot of bad things don't. And so there's a lot of purpose in this work.
Very good, thank you.
May I ask one question?
Please.
Rusty, you mentioned at the top of your discussion about this separation due to vaccination. So I think what I took from you saying that is that there are certain scenarios where if someone's separated due to the vaccination requirement, that they are eligible for unemployment. Is that what you're, under certain scenarios, and you would evaluate?
Yes, sir. According to our law, there are certain circumstances, and then the legislation brings in another component. So I'll just leave it at that, but yes, sir, there is.
Is it possible that you would be able to report out to us in the future how many people were specifically eligible due to vaccination separation?
The answer to that is I would like to be able to be. Part of that would come down to if our vendor can get that in place fast enough.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people's definition when they file for unemployment of their separation may vary.
Yes.
I mean, I may tell you that I was discharged, but I was really laid off through no fault of my own. I just don't understand the terminology. But yes, I would hope that we could do that because I would feel like that would be something that they're going to want to know at a state and a federal level.
Seems very significant, actually.
Yes, sir.
I do think too, and you need to correct me if I overstate, we just need to make sure that we don't have the impression that just because I got fired because I didn't have a vaccine, that I automatically get unemployment insurance. I could be a contractor. I mean, there's a lot of other things that would disqualify me. I might not be W-2, I might be 1099, I might not have the work history. I think a good statistic for us to know too is pre-pandemic, 40% of people who applied for unemployment insurance were not eligible. And we've been in a situation now because of the federal benefits that anybody, really a lot of people, a really high percentage anyway, who applied get it, but we're back to you have to earn eligibility. And in the vaccine, laws and that sort of thing, it's not a disqualifier, but there's plenty of other disqualifiers there. So I think, how'd I do, Rusty?
Actually, you did perfect. I mean, that's exactly right. You can't, where we get in trouble a lot is where the message goes out, when this passes, you're eligible. That's not always the case. As Commissioner said, there's a lot of different factors involved, and that's why the safest answer from our standpoint is to just say, if the person feels like they need to file for unemployment, everybody should file. Everybody's entitled to that choice to file, and then we will make the decision based on the laws and tell them whether they qualify or not. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one more question, if that's okay. Rusty, you'd reported, I think it was 2 meetings ago, on kind of fund balance for UI. Is it, at the time, it was still in a very healthy place? I was just kind of wondering, now that we're kind of getting back to a more normal state.
I'm sure my partner over there is gonna.
Why don't I help you out with that one, Rusty? We've normalized, and actually at our budget presentation to the governor, the same question was, and so we are back to spending what we the benefits distribution from the state, what we spent pre-pandemic. And of course, our goal was to stay over that $1 billion mark for the trust fund, which we're able to do. A lot of states weren't, and a lot of states have borrowed, and just in a different situation. But we were able to make some quick decisions that allowed us to do it. So we are good, barring any unforeseen issues that our trust fund is back at levels and supporting itself and not draining. So we're in a good situation. And again, I know we had a question at the board one time, what surcharges are employers going to have, because I think that was after 2008, and not. You're still at one of the lowest levels of premiums in the country. And so all that seems to have normalized, and we're back to where we want to be.
Thank you.
Good questions. All right, hearing no other, thank you, Rusty. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I sure appreciate the support.
Absolutely. All right, let's hear some updates from the committee meetings that went on before this meeting. And let's start with our Oversight Committee and Vice Chair Ronnie Brewer. Why don't you give us an overview of what you discussed?
Sure. In the spirit of robust conversations, we had a rather robust conversation in regards to the policy and procedure proposal. We are looking at policies right now from the state level, and so there was some suggestions that were made in regards to how the WIOA Joint Monitoring Compliance Work Group is composed, and some recommendations made in regards to certain groups that should be added to the work group to make sure that we have a more homogeneous mixture of individuals. Currently, the majority of the members either work for the state or they work for a local workforce board. And so the voice that's really missing is, one, those who are servicing the customers themselves, And we feel like that's really important when you start talking about designing policies that others are going to have to adhere to. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So the analogy that I shared there had to do with how much I like pancakes at IHOP. And so if the executives at IHOP give me key performance measures that say we can't spend more than 20 cents on pancakes and our profits need to look a certain way, but my customer comes and they don't like the 20-cent pancakes, they're not going to purchase those 20-cent pancakes. So no matter how many times I make these pancakes according to how the executives tell me to make them, if I'm not selling them, they're still not going to be happy. So when you look at how we're servicing our customers based on what the federal government has set up as guidelines. We're trying to adhere to them and make sure that we meet those guidelines. But the creativity of how we meet that is stifled by how our policies are currently set up. So we're looking for innovation, we're looking for, yes, guidance, but just a little bit of freedom to make sure that we can make sure our customers are happy, because if they're not coming in to the AJCs or to our community partners to utilize those services, then we keep sending money back, and then that doesn't look great for us. So we're just hoping that the suggestion that was made in regards to making it a more homogeneous mixture will be heard. And we also talked about not creating more barriers. So we had a few examples that were shared in regards to how our current policies, while they had great intentions, also had the result of creating more barriers for those who need the services. And so having to go through that was discouraging, and then therefore they don't take advantage of them. So these were just things that we brought up from experiences from the different individuals that were in the room. And we just hope to see that a more homogeneous mixture will, going forward, be a part of the work group.
Very good. I appreciate the good summary and the analogy. It made me hungry, but it makes good sense. So I appreciate that example. It's really good. What questions does the board have for the Oversight Committee or Ronnie? Any other comments from folks who were on that committee? Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, let's hear from the Operations Committee. Stuart, what do you have for us?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. The Operations Committee received three work group presentations, and so I would like to go through a synopsis of those, starting with the Job Seeker Work Group. Nikisha Ricks and Michelle Joyner gave a great presentation on their progress. The work group has completed action steps to continue progress on the following objectives. Regarding joint initiatives, multiple cross-agency initiatives, both formal and informal, were discussed. The most pressing issue is Proactive Child Care Initiative. The initiative is scheduled to launch in January of '22. Committee was provided a copy of communication materials and training developed by DHS for our staff on that topic and that offering. We had some good discussion around the importance of that and the barriers that child care issues represent. And so regarding resource and access alignment, technical assistance sessions and subgroup meetings are being planned with work group members, which will include sessions to understand and utilize labor market information, dashboard availability, and a Keep Tennessee Working Job Seeker Toolkit. This will bridge into other work groups as well. Also regarding cross-training, members of the work group are finalizing cross-training sessions to train and showcase new tools for career navigation once available. One action item already identified through initial cross-training sessions is the need for a standardized cross-agency referral. This will be extended to incorporate an internal process review and lead to additional cross-agency alignment. And lastly, moving forward, the group will focus on one shared message through a joint communication strategy for job seekers with resources available through multiple agencies. The work group will continue to host roundtable discussions to stay updated with rapid changes. And then our next presentation was the Business Services Work Group, Teresa Smith. She covered a number of items, beginning with the major milestone progress. They've identified employers 15 of them, to serve on an employer advisory committee for business solutions. These 15 members represent each grand region of the state. There are 2 union and 2 small business representatives from each region. Areas that are represented also are construction, hospitality, IT, logistics, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and others. And so this team is looking at a number of things. First of all, identifying roadblocks to collaboration and alignment among workforce partners, identifying efficient processes through which employers may access services. And on that topic, they're focusing in on a user interface to develop to help employers navigate their way through our system, which represents a lot of challenges for many of the employers across the state. And so they have engaged in an effort to come up with a consolidated user interface so that our employers can access more easily all our systems. And also, they're doing a baseline study, a survey with employers across the state, just basically making a determination, are our employers satisfied with what we offered, and if not, why? Beth Duffield has been hired to lead the efforts on developing a cohesive business solution statewide strategy. And so that employer advisory committee meets on the first Monday of each month, and so we'll be continuing to receive progress updates as they move forward. And then lastly, we received an update on the Apprenticeship Work-Based Learning Workgroup presentation from Matthew and Tyra. The Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning Workgroup reported solid progress toward its goals of increasing participation in their respective programs. As of September 30th, a total of 7,215 apprentices were actively participating in registered apprenticeship programs, representing an all-time high for our state. There were an additional 1,024 registered apprenticeship program completers during this time. Program sponsorship has also increased this year with 30 new registered apprenticeship program sponsors since January. The work group has already reached its 75% of its June 2023 goal. Work-based learning enrollment in the first quarter of the 21-22 school year has already exceeded enrollment for the entire previous year. This year's first quarter enrollment is more than double last year's first quarter enrollment. Lastly, the work group reported that Apprenticeship Tennessee is monitoring the outcomes from state certified pre-apprenticeships. Recently, 3 separate employers reported interviewing and hiring pre-apprentices into their registered apprenticeship programs. We also had a good discussion on completion rates and the challenges that are represented there, and then also how to improve completion rates. In moving forward, the team will focus on its team members hosting in-person career exploration events and developing more state-certified pre-apprenticeship programs. That was it.
Very good. Thank you for the summary. What questions does the board have for the Operations Committee or Stuart?
I'd like to ask a question to Matthew, if I could. Can you talk to us about the efforts from Department of Education and the work-based learning and what you're seeing, what you're thinking, and how it's being received by the LEAs and just individual schools?
Well, from the department's perspective, we've taken a lot of different capacity building initiatives. First, related to how our LEAs engage with local employers to kind of better facilitate those relationships. That is one contributing factor to the increase in our enrollment. A second thing that we really focused on was also just a sense of comfort or understanding among all of our most important stakeholders. Many of our employers were unfamiliar with the legality of hiring someone under the age of 18. And so I do want to thank you, Commissioner McCord, for your efforts in partnering with the Department of Education. Kenneth Neely has done a wonderful job, as well as Lisa Watson. They've been very integral parts in terms of better informing our employers. And so conducting those just individual outreach efforts has also led to kind of like small cohorts, and that becomes infectious. So it's the better capacity building efforts from our LEAs, understanding how to properly implement it, the relationship facilitating that. The informing of our employers is extremely important. And then likewise, once we get a little bit of momentum, the key messaging from the communications department at the Department of Education has really helped us become like infectious. And so you see a lot of momentum just because people want to kind of jump on board with where things are going. So that is probably the three main reasons why we've seen this momentum. But I will also share, and this is something I mentioned to the Operations Committee, our Q1 enrollment data for 21-22 more than doubles what the Q1 of 2021 was, right? And it already exceeds the number of students that were enrolled in last school year. However, the conditions for work-based learning right now are far more ripe for the picking, so to speak, right? We know that there's a labor shortage, okay? And I'll just be transparent. Speaking on behalf of the Department of Education, we've always advocated for the quality of employees that our students are. Because there is now such a demand, employers are now learning that, okay? And so that has probably been a big reason for all of this these great outcomes for our students.
Good information. Thank you. I love hearing that progress. All right. Let's hear from the Innovation Committee. Kevin, tell us about your meeting this morning.
All right, thank you, sir. Don't laugh. The Innovation Committee, we had some great discussions this morning. We had two great speakers, Ryan Allen and Rusty with the RIOA groups, gave a presentation on current projects and updates, which included the P20 Connect Tennessee, proactive communications, the Coleridge innovation, discussed the virtual AJCs, dashboards that were available to us, and the TDHS customer portals. Ben Pacino spoke then on the KPIs, kind of an update on the discussion of them between July 1st and September 30th of this year. We discussed the handouts that confirmed of his KPIs. All the KPIs are up at this time. Our committee has no policies or procedures that need to be voted on for today.
Very good. Any questions for the Innovation Committee or Kevin? Okay. Very good. Thank you, committees, for your work this morning and coming in early and going through those topics and hearing those presentations and the summaries today. I appreciate that. All right. Next, we're going to hear from Commissioner Clarence Carter on TANF.
Tim, thanks so much. Pleasure to be here with you this morning. And I want to start by thanking my colleague and new friend, Commissioner McCord, on the building of a necessary and durable partnership which will help to strengthen Tennessee by strengthening Tennesseans. You know, on the human services side, there is a narrative which currently exists that somehow work is either punitive or just stuff to do to keep people busy. Okay? We aggressively reject that notion. We believe that any work that is legal, moral, and ethical, and the associated earnings is a pathway to freedom. Amen. And that what is our objective is for every Tennessean to be as free as possible to live the life of their own choosing. And so this relationship where we are connected to the employment mechanism of the state is a vital partnership for our state. And so you guys have been introduced to the Tanf Opportunity Act, and I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and update you on where we are in our movement in the Opportunity Act. I hope you will remember this messy chart, okay? And folks, the most important part about this chart is the fact that every one of those things are, they're single-purpose initiatives that address a singular aspect of the human condition, and there is no overarching objective that is more than 80 programs, and we as a nation expend $1 trillion every single year in all of this. And there is no shore that we are rowing towards or a true north. And so it is our belief that we have to begin with an end in mind. And for us here in Tennessee, that end in mind is that those programs that make up the safety net ought to be a mile marker in a life's journey, not a destination unto itself. So we refer to our shared vision as that of growing capacity to reduce dependency. So it flows from a notion that the only reason that individuals avail themselves of the system of public supports is because they don't have within them the individual capacity to do those things for themselves. And so we believe if we are intentional, not just about providing a benefit, good, or service that someone's eligible for, but beginning with the intention to grow the capacity of that individual or family beyond that vulnerability, okay, then we will achieve the objective of making that safety net a mile marker in a life's journey and not a destination unto itself. So you will see there, and I don't think I need to refresh you on the four goals of TANF. And again, just and these are the elements of the Tanf Opportunity Act. And let me just again quickly explain that the challenge we had found ourselves in is that the TANF program, unlike many other federal funding sources, if the dollars are not expended, then they are simply held in escrow at the federal level until the state uses those dollars. Well, over the course of years, because the state has gotten the same TANF allocation of $191 million, it's gotten that every single year for the past 25 years. And we didn't put all of those dollars in play, so we had built up a pretty sizable unobligated balance. And that unobligated balance was north of $700 million. Now, as you can imagine, we got our tails kicked for having $700 million in escrow and having Tennessee families that had challenges. So we put our heads together and built a plan around reducing that unspent balance and ensuring that we would never get there again, but also putting those dollars in place in the most impactful way. That is where the Tanf Opportunity Act comes in, okay? And so for me, the most exciting part about the Tanf Opportunity Act for purposes of our relationship here is we will have, at the end of the day, 7 pilots projects, 2 in each of the 3 grant regions and 1 that DHS will operate. And all 7 of those pilots will be about this idea of demonstrating this notion of growing capacity to reduce dependency. So we are now in the middle of the first part of that initiative, and that is where we have called for, from all across the state, abstracts that what we're asking for is, say, you explain how you would go about this notion in your community of growing capacity to reduce dependency. But here's something that's important in what we want to see in your abstract, is how are you going to bring together multiple sectors of your community to support your objective, okay? Because one of the problems that we have in the way the safety net operates is that over the years, as we have become much more government-centric, we have crowded out other sectors of our society from being part of solving the problem. And so what we know that we need to do is we need to use government as a catalyst to call the rest of Tennessee to the work. And so what we said is we're not looking for a proposal from any singular organization. We are looking for a shared community vision around this growing capacity to reduce dependency. So we received, by our deadline, we initially received about 80 applications for these planning grants. And we had to do what we call a mandatory review, which there were some of them that simply didn't meet important regulatory marks. So we had to move those out. And we ended up with 47 applications, which the Tanf Advisory Committee is currently in the review process of. So what will happen is, at our December 7th meeting, that advisory committee, it will determine which of those 47 applications we will then award planning grants to. And the idea of the planning grant is that, okay, your initial abstract was a compelling idea. We need to know more. So we want you to build it out. So we will provide for them a 90-day period by which they will answer the more difficult questions of how is this thing going to be operational? What do your partnerships look like? You know, what success look like? Those kinds of things. And they will have a 90-day period in order to do that. So we will make those decisions on December 7th. And then after this 90-day period, we will then make decisions. This advisory committee will make decisions on the 6 pilots, 2 in each of the 3 grand divisions. And then, as I said, the other one that the DHS will operate. So, and so what I want to do with you as I close this out is share with you an idea that will give you some sense of when we talk about growing capacity to reduce dependency, what we mean. One of the challenges that is baked into our safety net system is what is referred to as the cliff effect. And the cliff effect is a result of us not having a shared vision of growing capacity to reduce dependency. So as individuals, if they would progress economically, socially, and developmentally, the cliffs come in where you remove benefits from an individual or family before they are prepared to assume that responsibility. And that happens because we didn't have a shared vision or intention for what we're doing, so we are driven by the rules of those individual programs and what their eligibility limits and all are. So we, quite frankly, have created a system that disincentivizes people from moving forward. Because why is it that I'm going to take $1 an hour raise if I'm going to lose $100 in benefits because of it? Okay? It's the foolishness of the system that we have created. So in the DHS partnership, what we are going to do is we're going to smooth out those cliffs to create a slope. And how we want to realize that is we are looking at the population of the Public Housing Authority. And what we currently know is that with all of the properties that they have, they are currently filled to maximum capacity for all their properties. And so, of course, they are building more. But by being filled to capacity, there are still 16,000 folks that are on the waiting list. So the conversation that we are in is that there are individuals and families that are at the upper end of their eligibility for public housing. What it would be our intention to do is to work with some number between 2,000 to 5,000 of those folks that are at the upper end to actually move them to either market rate housing or home ownership so that we can then move them out of public housing so we then create room for some of that waiting list to come in. Growing capacity on that top end to reduce dependency and overall growing the capacity of the public housing system, okay? As I said, the notion is to strengthen Tennessee by strengthening Tennesseans. So we are on schedule, and we will be able to make an announcement about our planning grant awardees prior to the end of this calendar year. And we will continue to keep this body updated in our work, because what is important is that everybody in our pilots is going to work. Because as we said, work is not punitive, it's a path to freedom. So thanks an awful lot. That's what we wanted to share with you this morning.
That's great information. I like the vision that you have for that, and, some of the mantras that you have in there, strengthening Tennessee by strengthening Tennesseans. I love that. And it's the right set of goals. What questions do you have for Clarence this morning? Yes, Marshall.
I have less of a question than I have a comment. I've followed this program pretty closely over the last few months, and it's pointed out to me again that the capacity of rural Tennessee to actually apply for these kinds of things is so low. I appreciate the work at our local developmental district to sort of focus their efforts around that, but I would encourage you to, as you evaluate these grants, to give some effort to those grants that impact rural Tennessee, because I think the capacity to even apply for these grants is very centralized in the cities. And it could very well be the case without your guidance that once again, the rural areas could just don't have the capacity to even begin to build capacity, so.
And Marcia, you're 1,000% right. And an important part of our movement forward here was first an understanding that communities know these issues better than any external entity. And so what we have to do is engage communities, and we have to engage them as they are constituted. So we are going to be very particular about ensuring that throughout the three grand divisions, that we have representation from both, from urban, suburban, and rural, because the texture of these issues are different in rural communities. And any idea that somehow we could sit here in Nashville and have this cookie cutter notion is ridiculous and arrogant. And so there absolutely will be, rural community partnerships that are going to be part of these planning grants.
Good. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, Ron Wade in Memphis area. I really appreciate your passion. It seems like that this is something that's not just a job, but inside your heart, and it really comes across in the presentation. Just got one quick question. Of the 47 that you're going to make a decision in December, did I understand you'll cut that to 6? And then if the 6, then are those committed, or what's that process?
Okay, so from the 47, there's going to be another culling before the 6. So we have about $5 million in which to award planning grants to some subset of that 47. And so what will happen in December is we will determine what that subset is. Let's just say, for sake of argument, we award 18 planning grants, okay? Then those 18 will go forward and build out their initiatives, from then which we will make the determination of the 6, and we will do that early next spring.
Okay, thank you.
And Ron, I appreciate your acknowledgement up front. My wife has told me I need to calm down some.
No, not at all.
But I will tell you that this is the thing that I was put on this earth for. Okay? I have, for 30 years, I have watched the dysfunction of trillions and trillions of dollars of public money intended to serve those individuals that were economically, socially, and developmentally vulnerable, and have sought an opportunity to do something about it. And here we have a chance to do something about it. So I'm going to calm down a little bit, but but not too much.
Very good. You had a question? Yes.
Yes, sir. My question is dealing with the public housing you was talking about. You have a lot of people on that waiting list. I have a lot of friends that's been going down, doing a little work down in Waverly, and there's a lot of people down there that are still hurting, still don't have housing. Are you going to do any builds in Waverly to try to take care of some of those folks that are without housing now?
So Jeff, what I don't want to do is, I don't want to step into somebody else's jurisdiction. So the Department of Human Services, we don't do public housing, okay? And so that's a conversation that I will leave to my colleagues that do that. What I do know is that if we're intentional about it, we can help with some of those capacity issues by moving some folks beyond it that we then can do that with.
Good questions. Yes, sir.
I'm just
Please.
going to offer a comment too. So back to three things. One, I just want to state for the record that I have finished reviewing my applications, Commissioner, so I'm up to date. It took a long time, but put in the hours. Secondly, back to growing the number of people in the workforce. And I've said before, we have a lot of important workforce development initiatives that this board oversees, that we partner with TBR or whoever the case may be, but this is certainly high among them. And third, it's really fun to work with Clarence. And so, yeah, it's not too hard to get him going on this either, which is wonderful and uplifting, and you know you're doing the right thing, and you have a lot of belief. It's amazing what can happen. So thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Carter, thank you. I appreciate your time and passion and good insight. Excellent information. All right, a couple of meetings ago, if you remember, we started talking about a certification for our board, and we're promised an update at this meeting. And so Assistant Commissioner Plale is going to give us that update now. Steve, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Chairman Berry. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board this morning. Steve Plale, Assistant Commissioner for the Division of Workforce Services. So I want to start just one. I will be brief. I know we have a lot on the agenda today, and there's a lot of things that are going on. It's also really hard to follow Commissioner Carter in anything, so I will be brief. First, just the kind of idea around certification. The Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act requires that local areas be certified by the governor, and there are three criteria for for certification. The first is that the local area must demonstrate that they have performed successfully, that they have sustained fiscal integrity, and that they are meeting the requirements of their local plan and regional plan. That's for local area certification. There's actually no requirement for state workforce board certification. However, it is my understanding, the opinion of this board, that we view compliance here in Tennessee as the floor. It's not the pinnacle. And this board laid out the expectation that we would serve as, or the board would serve as a model for our local areas and our local workforce development boards. And we'll go through a process to set criteria, standards of excellence or hallmarks of excellence of what the board operations look like. Establish an assessment of how local areas and boards should operate, and then move forward in that manner to then certify local areas and local boards. We're working with several partners. We've had preliminary discussions with some outside external stakeholders through the University of Tennessee system. The Center for Industrial Services is one of those that we've had some conversations around, potential assessment, potential training for our local areas, for our state workforce board members. We've also worked with East Tennessee State University, had conversations with them regarding what this could look like. Still very preliminary in our conversation around what we want to assess and what we want to make sure that we're doing. But I'll come back to a couple of things that Commissioner Carter mentioned, and that is growing capacity to reduce dependency and strengthening Tennessee by strengthening Tennesseans. The question that we're trying to approach here is what would it take to ensure that every Tennessean is economically viable in the workforce? What would it take? And I think it takes strong leadership from our boards. It takes fiscal integrity, programmatic integrity to ensure consistency across the system. And that is something that we have really been exploring. Prior to the pandemic, the department actually partnered with Ernst & Young to do some assessments of our local boards. We did this in 2019. You may remember some of this work. They highlighted a few things specifically around cohesiveness of the local areas and their work, grand divisionally, but then also across the state as a whole. As a result of those, the department also worked with our Atlanta regional office, the U.S. Department of Labor, to draft out some potential training modules for local board staff around roles, responsibilities, functions of a local board. We expect to take those drafts. Those were not publicly released, but we expect to take those drafts, build upon that work, and really draft out a framework of training and support, technical assistance for you as state workforce board members, but also our local board areas. Again, you serving as the model to kind of establish what the certification would look like. And then really the kind of the deliverables of this, what we want to make sure is that we establish and execute standards of high-performing boards, what that looks like, common standards of performance and consistency across our workforce system, really to standardize the process for certifying, decertifying boards, what happens with American Job Centers and their service delivery, and then also what our board members understanding their roles and responsibilities are, and then providing technical assistance and training to ensure that that happens. So that's kind of where we are, Chairman. That's where our mind is and where we're working toward. Expect over the next coming months to have quite a bit of movement on this, working with some of our policy groups, some of our groups that we are partnering with that I know Ronnie Brewer mentioned earlier, exploring some of this as well, but also working with some of those outside external stakeholders.
Steve, if you had a best guess for timeline, when would you think we'd be ready as a board to put that stamp of approval or the certification on this board? What's your goal?
Yeah, great question. We hope to be able to present some sort of a draft at the March meeting, so March 25th, 2022, have a draft of that that we would present probably to the Oversight Committee and then move from there, hopefully to be able to bring a finalized draft in June of next year, so June 3rd. That would be leading into the next fiscal year as well, so that puts us ahead of that schedule.
So the goal would be that by the next fiscal year, we'd be a certified board?
Correct.
Okay, good. What questions do you have for Steve or the certification process or what we're trying to accomplish through that? Sounds like you did a good job summarizing it.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good. All right. So with that, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but that will not stop us from taking a break. So for comfort and for mental health, please enjoy a break, and we'll call us back to order in just a little bit. All right. We have a presentation from Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker, and he's going to talk about some alternate pathways to high school equivalency. So, Jay, tell us what you have for us today.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Chairman Barry. I am Jay Baker, Assistant Commissioner of the Adult Education Division here at the department. And again, I want to thank you, Chairman Barry, and members of the board for this opportunity to present today. I think I can speak for all of the Tennessee Adult Education team in saying that this topic, alternate pathways to a high school equivalency diploma, has the potential to make a really big impact in our state, on our state's workforce development system and labor supply, and ultimately will help a lot more Tennesseans on their career pathways, we hope. So I'll be talking about what a high school equivalency diploma is, why it's important, why we think we even need alternate pathways to get those diplomas, and our proposal for what those pathways might look like. And at the end, I would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. And ultimately, if you like our proposal, I will ask this board for your endorsement to move forward. So, getting started, what is this high school equivalency diploma? Hopefully everybody in this room has heard of this. If not, then get excited. This is an official Tennessee secondary school diploma. It functions very similar to a regular high school diploma in that it gets people to the next step, whether it's the job that requires that as a minimum qualification or to a post-secondary opportunity. Ultimately, though, it's for people for whom the traditional K-12 route just didn't work for whatever reason. And so this is the option that folks can still have to get that credential and move forward. The criteria for earning this diploma is set by the State Board of Education. It is in their rules that there's established the requirements for a person to be able to get this diploma. And currently, the rule established by the State Board of Education is that someone has to pass the HiSET exam. And I will go more into what the HiSET is all about here in just a minute. Our department, the Adult Education Division in particular, oversees high school equivalency preparation and programs across the state. That's a big part of what we do here at the division, is to provide grants to local programs and oversight and support to help them help Tennesseans in their basic education, ultimately trying to help folks get that diploma. We also issue the diplomas from our department to the public as they receive them, and we do all the fun record keeping and that sort of thing. This diploma is critical because it allows for people to enter into post-secondary training programs, again, jobs that require a diploma as a minimum qualification, or for work promotions. So that's really the key that unlocks the opportunity for a lot of people. Now, this number, I think, is a little bit staggering. There are about 450,000 Tennesseans who are working age today that do not have a high school diploma or an equivalency diploma. Now, to put a workforce lens on that, when we look at labor force participation, which the commissioners were talking about earlier, we have analyzed groups of people based on their education attainment level, and the group most likely to not be in the labor force, means they're not working, not looking for work, are the people without a high school diploma or equivalency. Their participation rate sits at about 50%. So 50% of that 450,000, about 250,000 people, are not in the labor force. So participation rates drastically increase. The data shows this. Drastically increases when people get the high school diploma. It increases even more when they get post-secondary or college opportunities. So unlocking that first step of getting in this diploma is critical. Now, of course, some people have challenges in their lives that are in this group that makes it so they might never get a diploma, might never participate in the workforce. We understand that. But regardless, there are scores of people in this group who can certainly benefit from increasing their education, and ultimately our economy and our state benefit as well. So we have to find more ways. We have to find more ways to engage this population in their education. From the student's perspective then, why are our students coming to us? Why do they seek this diploma? When we survey students and ask them why they took the HiSET exam to get their diploma, this is what the data shows. 18% of students want some kind of technical school or technical training. 18% want 2-year college, 15% want 4-year college, 14% are just looking to get a job, and ultimately 2/3 of our students want some kind of post-secondary education, training, or work, which is great, right? That's what we all want. That's what we are here for. Unfortunately, we currently have some structures in place which makes those goals really hard to realize for a lot of individuals. So I want to dive into then what our problem is currently with these structures. How is this current pathway a problem? It's a problem because the HiSET exam that I was referring to earlier is the only option. It's the only option for getting this diploma. Someone has to sit for and pass that exam. So I want to tell you what this exam is all about. It's a 5-subject multiple choice test with a written essay. It's time limited, it's standardized, it's high stakes, just like the GED or the ACT or the SAT, the GRE, the LSAT. You know, those really fun, not stressful at all tests that we've all had to sit through before. They are not fun and they're very stressful, right? And we know that, I'll bet in this room, there's a lot of people that raise their hand and say, I am not a good test taker in such an environment. There are a lot of people in that category, and our students are no exclusion. Passing the HiSET can be a barrier for our students. We hear it time and time again. High stakes, timed, standardized tests are difficult, and research bears this out as well. It has for years. We see that high stakes testing increases stress and it lowers test performance in and of itself, thereby calling into question how accurate some of those results really are for students who are really, really struggling and really, really stressed when they take this test. And in fact, the research shows that this effect is even more pronounced for people who have outside stressors in their lives. So if their home life isn't great or their financial situation isn't great, and that is the majority of our adult education students. So it makes a stressful situation even more stressful when they sit for this exam, which is so high stakes because they have so much writing on it, and it causes their performance to be lessened as a result. So our students are eager to have other options. We hear it from them across the state. We've been hearing it for years. Quick example from my own experience. A few years ago, I was an adult education instructor, a teacher at Tcat Nashville. I had a student named Kenny. And Kenny had his own small business, a small construction company, didn't have his diploma. That's why he was in our program. And he was very diligent, showed up every class, every week, studied hard, and really struggled with math on paper, but he could pull out his measuring tape and bust out some geometry if it was construction related, no problem. I see some head nods, you can relate to this. Unfortunately though, Kenny was not a strong test taker, but we did the best we could to prepare for that test. He did. He went and took the HiSET exam, passed every subject except for math. Tale as old as time. So Kenny came back, we worked some more, we studied some more, did what we could to prepare him even better, and then he signed up for a second attempt and failed the math again. So he had one more chance in that calendar year. That's the HiSET rules. You get 3 shots in a year and then you're done. So one last time, Kenny studied, went and took the test, barely did not pass the math. Kenny was so frustrated that he quit the program. And he was so close. He had passed everything, missed the math by just a little bit. And he said, I can't do it, I quit. And to my knowledge, to this day, Kenny still does not have a high school diploma. Now, I know for a fact that Kenny is an extremely reliable, diligent, capable, smart individual who would be a very capable worker, is a capable worker, and could succeed in certain training programs, no problem. But we have this barrier that says you have to pass this exam. That's the only way to move forward. Now, other states have realized that this is a problem, and they have jumped in with both feet trying to solve this and have created alternate pathways. One case in point I'll share with you is Washington State. They, several years ago, implemented alternate pathways besides just passing the GED test, which is what they use in Washington. And since then, they have seen upwards of 2,000 additional students every year getting a diploma and moving on. And we want that in Tennessee. We want some other options. So, to further illustrate this sort of dilemma we're in with just the single option, I want to show you some HiSET outcomes. Now, first, some context. The GED test and the HiSET test were redesigned and aligned with Common Core back in 2014. Now, I am not here to debate whether Common Core is good or bad, or whether making that change was a good or bad decision, but let's see what the data show. In the 7-year period prior to that change, we were averaging about 9,000 high school equivalency diplomas in Tennessee every year, about 9,000 diplomas a year. The change happened in 2014, and you can see with your own eyes how that number has plummeted. Now we are averaging less than 5,000 per year. This is a nationwide trend because these are national exams. It is not just here. So a narrow pathway got even narrower in recent years. And we want to see that number increase. Of course, we all do. We want to get students the skills that they need to succeed in whatever their next steps are. The HiSET test is still a fine indicator. It is. It's a good test, and it indicates a student's readiness. The issue, again, is that it's our only indicator. So our current pathway is just too narrow. There just aren't enough people succeeding. We have thousands upon thousands of people who don't have a diploma. They come to us, they come to our program, they want to better themselves. We try to push them to this only option they have to get that credential, and we don't get a whole lot of graduates out the other end. They're happy, but we want more. We can broaden the workforce pipeline by creating alternate pathways for attaining this high school equivalency diploma. That's the thesis. We can broaden our pipeline if we can create other ways to get that credential. So we propose 3 different pathways, 3 different options through which a student can earn their diploma. The first is still the HiSET. As I said a moment ago, it's a fine test. It's been around for several years. The public awareness is already there. We already have testing centers and infrastructure in place across the state with the HiSET in place. And they instituted a virtual option during the pandemic so that a student can take the HiSET from the comfort of their own home, which has been a great option for people. So we don't want that to go away. So again, if a student passes the HiSET exam, these 5 subjects, we still want to issue them a high school equivalency diploma. The second pathway that we propose is a Tcat diploma pathway. Now, you don't actually need a high school diploma to enter into a Tcat. It's a TBR admissions policy for general admission that you can get into a Tcat, you can enroll in the school without a diploma. You only need to be 18 years old. That is their base requirement. Now, certain programs, yes, do require a certain GPA from high school. Certain programs might require a diploma, but again, as a general admissions requirement, people can enroll in Tcat without their diploma. So, based on data, the best that we have available recently, it looks like about 10 to 15% of Tcat students actually do enroll and they don't have a high school diploma. That's a pretty big number, especially when we consider in the last fall trimester alone, 10,000 new students enrolled in Tcats across the state, which means upwards of 1,000 to 1,500 of those students didn't have a diploma. Well, what if those students successfully complete their Tcat program? I assume that that is why they are there. And so if they can successfully complete a Tcat program, get a diploma, they have just demonstrated that they can successfully navigate a post-secondary program by virtue of having done it. And so why would we hold them back and not also give them a high school equivalency diploma, and so we won't stop their progress in any way? That brings me to our third and final pathway proposal, which is a custom pathway. And this is a little more complex in nature, but we think gives the most options to our students in terms of giving them what they need to strengthen. Well, this is a bad way to say it. If they have weaknesses in certain areas, it gives them other options so that just sitting for that high stakes exam isn't the only way to do it, right? So ultimately, a high school diploma, as I said earlier, is meant to indicate that a person will be successful in whatever their next steps are. Their post-secondary program, their training program, their job. And so that is the baseline, that's the benchmark. What are the competencies a person needs to be successful? So we believe that those competencies are math, reading, writing, and work readiness. TBR has that within their requirements for entering into their programs. You as employers across the state, we hear all the time, these are the core competencies that a person needs to be successful in whatever program, whatever job: math, reading, writing, and work readiness. Work readiness meaning soft skills, digital literacy. So The academic competency options that we propose a person could do are adult education assessments, which we have already infused throughout our system, TABE being the most common, which is the test of adult basic education. These are in math, reading, and language. Every student takes a TABE test, or the vast majority of the English-speaking population in our program does. And so this is already baked into what we do. And they take this assessment and it gives us a read on what is their math and reading and writing ability. And they use this as progress tests as well. So we're using this a lot already. The second option under academics then is, again, the high school equivalency. If they pass reading and writing and science and social studies, if it's Kenny and he got everything except the math, well, we should still be able to check the box on, yeah, he gets it on math, on reading and writing. And then he has other options to try to demonstrate his math competency. Finally, under the academic piece, we propose using career readiness assessments, such as ACT work keys. We know that there's a lot of push for ACT work keys and having career-ready communities, or work-ready communities, I think is the term in the state. So this is already, again, kind of infused into our system, and we hear all the time that these assessments are really good indicators of more contextualized abilities, because it's workplace math, it's workplace reading, and we think this would be also a really good option to demonstrate those academic competencies for students. So if a student can check the box in however mix and match way on the academic competencies piece, that leaves one more competency, which is the work readiness. So what we propose is to demonstrate work readiness competency, a student needs to show soft skills and digital literacy skills. And we have programs that we're implementing in our local areas across the state that have curriculum and assessments around, does a person have soft skills, do they have digital literacy, so that we can turn that into actually its own little certificate. Yes, you have soft skills, here's your certificate. So again, we hear all the time from employers how crucial these things are. We also want students to complete employability activities. By that I mean, do some career pathways exploration, job searching, getting help and guidance from a career staff, a professional who can help them navigate their career aspirations. That also would include then creating a resume and doing a mock interview. Essentially everything that a person needs in order to get ready and land a job. So if a person can do all of that, we want to give them a standalone certificate called the Tennessee Work Ready Certificate that, irrespective of the high school diploma, they can still get this Tennessee Work Ready Certificate that in and of itself means something, that they have those soft skills, digital literacy and employability skills that they need. But again, if they do work readiness and they do academics all put together, we think that demonstrates they are ready to move on, go to training, go to post-secondary, get that job, and we would give them a high school equivalency diploma. I went through a lot on this slide. There is a checklist in your folder that kind of describes what we're proposing in terms of cut scores on these assessments and things like that. So if you want to reference that later, you certainly can. So it's a little easier laid out of how, at least for certainly a student, would be able to navigate a checklist easier than my slide here. Okay. So in summary, why do we need alternate pathways? Our pipeline is just too narrow. We need to broaden and expand that pathway and broaden our pipeline. We have all these people without a diploma. If we give them more options and more pathways to take through the HiSET, a Tcat diploma, or this custom route, we'll get a lot more happy graduates and a lot more people who are ready to go into training, go into college, go into those jobs that we need filled. So what are our next steps? Well, first, we want TBR's endorsement. We want to make sure they're on board. We have many students who go into TBR programs, and so we will be seeking their endorsement of this proposal, hopefully by the end of the year. We also need the State Board of Education approval and a rule change. As I said at the beginning, they are the ones who set the criteria for how you can earn this diploma. So really nothing happens without the State Board of Education being bought in and approving this. Then we will use the spring to get ready and train and officially implement these new pathways starting in July in the new fiscal year. That is the hope, that is the goal. So we will be seeking feedback every step of the way and make revisions as needed at each level. That includes with this board today. And we will gather outcomes data once we do implement, because I'm under no illusion that we have this figured out perfectly and that we'll never touch it again. And so we want to make sure that we are looking at the real data, the real outcomes as they happen, and report back regularly to our stakeholder groups, including this board if you like, and then we will make revisions accordingly. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours about this. If that sounds like fun, you can reach out to me. This is a big change, clearly. We're proposing a big change. But again, we think ultimately this is a really important and good direction to go. Other states are doing this. We want to jump in and help more Tennesseans. So please, again, reach out to me with if you want to further the discussion. But next, first and foremost, again, I would like to ask for this board's endorsement. Your recommendation and approval to move forward with this would be a critical piece of the puzzle. And so I also want to answer any questions, hear your thoughts and feedback, but ultimately we would seek that endorsement if you are willing. And so with that, I will turn it back to Chairman Berry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I think what he's proposing doesn't require a vote for us, from us, but I think if he can have this endorsement that he's requesting, if we can, on the record today, say, yes, as a board, we like the direction you're going, then that gives him some credibility when he's, moving this forward with on up the line in his next steps. And so, before we, talk about that, what questions do you have from his presentation, and what would you like him to include or clarify before he takes this to next steps?
Chairman Berry, I'd like to ask a question of Jay.
Yes, please, Jason.
First of all, Jay, thank you very, very much as a parent of a child who did not enjoy high school at all and on his own decided to drop out at 17 and not to be a bum, as he told me, but to go on to university. I appreciate that there are these alternative ways for other people, because high school is not for everybody. And it's for a variety of different reasons. And a lot of times we think it's because they're lazy and they don't want to do things, but that's not necessarily the case. So I appreciate what you're doing here, and I'm very excited to see this. My question would be is, you mentioned about how many, the students who are seeking the high school equivalency diplomas, what's the average age of these, of the people who are inquiring and wanting to get these? Are we talking about, are they mainly 20-year-olds, or are we talking about people who are in their 40s and 50s? What is it that you see as the people who are really inquiring and saying, I need to get this, and I don't know how to do that?
Thank you for the question, Jason, and for your vote of confidence as well. So to answer your question, I don't have that data right in front of me, but I can tell you that it does run the whole spectrum from 17-year-olds, which is a whole can of worms when it comes to working with our local school systems. But we do get 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, kids who just drop out and still want to just kind of keep going and get their diploma. But lots of folks in their 20s, that's kind of, if we look at just the curve of everybody in the program, the mid-20s is huge, but then we also have people 30s, 40s, and even up to folks in the retired age. And so it's really agnostic of any age group as to who wants this and who takes advantage.
Jay, in the customized option there, is there a way to save progress and come back and take that portion that's challenging you, rather than having to study for the entire exam again and focus? I mean, that's what you do in your K-12. You have reteaching options and all those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor Morton. That is, again, what we are hoping to accomplish by instituting that custom pathway, is that if a person wants to take the high set, that's great. And if they happen to not pass, it's not the end. I mean, even the high set in itself, currently there are retake options, like I said with Kenny. Unfortunately, though, there's still going to be a high-stakes test. Sometimes if they exhaust their retakes, they have to wait months and months and months so they can try again. And so, yes, ultimately, if we do institute these other options, it does allow somebody who might be discouraged if one option didn't work, then there's no reason to necessarily quit entirely, or if they do want to take a little sabbatical and come back later, the options are still there for them.
But can I come back and just take the
Yes.
language arts?
Absolutely. Once you've checked the box, it's checked.
Okay.
And that's also true for the high set currently.
Okay.
So Jay, I just want to make sure I understand this for clarity. I could come and get level 4 in math, and then score an 8 in reading on the high set, and then go back and my tape be a level 4 in writing, and I can mix and match all of those because maybe
Exactly.
one testing style works for me in a certain area and not in the other area.
That's exactly correct, Ronnie. And if they were to do that for each of the academic components, then they would just have that work readiness component still to complete. But that you're exactly right, it's a mix and match.
One reference I would suggest is talking to the Army Recruiting Command at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and see the challenges they face nationwide about certifying high school diplomas, as they work very hard on that, and those non-streamlined groups are great candidates for soldiers out there, and they solve that problem in every different state.
Absolutely. Thank you for that referral, Mayor Morton.
I have a question, and I learn something every time I come here. So I did not know that with the Tcat diploma, that you're not required to have a high school diploma. I did not know that, so that's interesting. So with that in mind, and just because when you're job ready, right, the latest diploma that they're going to ask you is your latest one. They're not going to go back to your high school diploma. How we would incentivize those to go back? And if we use that pathway, how we're going to incentivize if I have my diploma from my Tcat, they're not going to ask for my high school, or am I having that incorrect?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So the reason we're considering that pathway as a good one is not necessarily to send them back and do now their high school experience, but it's to say, you have already completed a post-secondary program, so by default, let's grandfather you in and give you a high school diploma, if nothing else, as a rite of passage, so that they can put it on their resume and tell their family they have their high school credential. And so even if, to your point, even if it's not necessarily on a resume or not needed at any given employer, it still means something deep to these people to be able to say they have that high school credential.
So technically, they will run concurrent, if you will.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Yeah, you get, and they may want to go to community college, and they will ask you for your high school diploma there, yeah.
Excuse me,
I'd recommend that we get in with our Tennessee Promise folks and brand that Tennessee Promise opportunity to folks who don't have the high school diploma, and be very public about that. So we have that pathway when we establish it.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor Morton. We have big hopes for Tennessee Promise, Tennessee Reconnect for the adult population. We want to make sure that we are absolutely tapping into those funding streams. Thank you.
So let me just be clear that I am team work readiness, okay? But from the perspective of the person that is utilizing this custom path, if I take both the high set and also the tape test, and I do that mix and match, and get those numbers where they need to be, and then having that extra requirement of having to get the workforce readiness certificate almost seems like extra, because had I just taken the high set and passed it, I wouldn't be required to then also have this work readiness certificate. So have you thought about how that response is going to be and how people are going to be feeling to be asked to do something in addition just because they mixed and matched their scores?
Yeah, a very good question. And we have thought about it. There's not necessarily an easy answer to that question, because despite our best efforts to call all these things apples and apples, they're clearly different. They're different things, and they ultimately try to serve that same purpose, the least common denominator of which is readiness to be successful or readiness to enter into post-secondary training or a job that requires that diploma. And so you'll notice that with the high set, it required a science and social studies component. We're not necessarily, with the mix and match route, going to have that competency as a requirement, and we are adding this new one of work readiness. And so it's a little bit of give and take there, but ultimately what we have heard time and time again across the board, regardless of what the next steps are, is that work readiness piece is critical. And so if we feel that if if we're changing at all that academics component, which we are, by even taking out science and social studies, we want to make sure we add something robust and rigorous that people actually say they want and need, which is that work readiness piece.
And how long is that work readiness piece? I mean, has that program been created and we already know how long of a period it is?
We are currently in the first steps of implementation of that. And in fact, we still have some work to do to decide exactly, for example, what the various digital literacy skills we want to require a student to be sufficient in. And so that's still some work in progress. But we do have a standalone product for soft skills, for example, which if a student could just take the assessment to say, do I have these soft skills or not? Or if they need some coursework to study up on soft skills like punctuality, teamwork, all these things, then that curriculum is there. And it can take from 15 to 20 to 40 hours, depending on the person. But ultimately, they can still take that assessment whenever and say, yep, I've got my soft skills credential that says I at least have some level of these soft skills. And so short answer is we're still working on the exact details of how long that will take, but it's like everything else, it will probably vary depending on the needs and skill set of the individual student.
Well, the only last comment, I promise, that I'm going to make in regards to that is it takes me back to the conversation that we were having earlier about barriers. And so I just want us to be very careful about how many requirements that we're going to put in place for someone to qualify and how long it's going to take, because a lot of times the individuals that we're serving that need these things cannot afford to invest a large amount of time without being paid. So we just have to keep that in mind when we're creating these expectations.
That's great feedback. Thank you, Ronnie.
And if I may, so what, it's great work by Jay and his team, and I'll say this, over the last couple of years, we do enroll adult ed students now, and that's never happened before. He's got work-based learning programs with adult education students, which had never happened before, and this is the next logical step. But he's got to make the case, we've got to make the case that this is an alternative path that's just as rigorous, or within that range of rigor to demonstrate. And so that's what this package of things is to do that. So anyway, that's why, again, you'll be asking for the endorsement, and that endorsement means we can go to TBR and say, hey, we've talked to State Board, they're behind this, and that would be our next step on the journey before we get to the decision maker, who's the State Board of Education.
Can I, if I may, first of all, I really applaud your creativity and appreciate that. And I find myself representing sort of rural Middle Tennessee. 18 months ago, we didn't have a HiSET program in the county where I live. So I think we were the only county in the state that didn't have a HiSET program. So even getting to that was actually complicated and difficult. We had a lot of partners that worked really hard to even start that. So I would just encourage you to look, sort of do some overlap on the pathways that you're developing. Do they actually cover the rural Tennessee area? You know, it's a long way to a Tcat from Palmer, Tennessee. And so, you know, our ability in rural Tennessee to even implement those pathways might be difficult. So, you know, if you're trying to be creative, you know, I would just suggest maybe you look at the geography and do those pathways even cover it, and do the capacities of some of these counties. Are they there to even offer this alternative that you've got? But otherwise, I would personally fully endorse what you're doing and appreciate the work very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marshall. And we'll certainly be looking at the impact on the rural communities. Thank you.
I'd like to just add my endorsement. Seems like everyone is certainly appreciative of you and your team thinking outside of the box. Just really great. The most compelling piece of this to me, and seems like it affects the timing, is your comment about 50% of the 450,000 working age Tennesseans do not have a high school diploma. And that's such a barrier of the businesses that we work with. Sometimes they will not even accept an interview at all unless you don't have a high school diploma. So being creative outside of that. Also, Tcat, I'm also like Michelle. I was not aware that they would not accept someone without HiSET something. And the fact that they are thinking about doing that, and also the cost, absorbing the cost of that, that can really be a game changer. So it's great job.
Thank you, Ron.
And then I would just say, from a KPI standpoint, that, the number you shared at the beginning, that 250 or 225,000 folks are not in the workforce, and we're issuing 4,800 diplomas out of that group. That percentage is way too small.
Yeah.
So, more options to get that number higher is definitely better, and would, again, you're inventing the benchmark here, so I don't know necessarily what a KPI would be, but I would try to establish, at least a goal of aspiration to say, we think that by opening these options, we hope to be able to get to this number, to start within the first, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever you want to put on that. And that just gives people, at least an indicator of where you're headed, or what your target's going to be by opening up these additional options.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. And if I may, Chairman, we have done a little bit of analysis on that just based on our current student population and the education levels that they come in at. And we think that first year, if we can go to scale quickly, we're going to see upwards of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 additional diplomas on top of what we're doing. And so the potential here is huge to even get close to doubling what we're currently doing within a matter of a couple of years. So that's maybe a little pie in the sky, but there's a lot to get done before that can happen, obviously. But the numbers are there in terms of the students that we already see in our program.
Excellent.
But that closes the gap back to where we were before we had the gap.
Yeah.
So I think it is feasible with the requisite amount of rigor that we put that as our goal. And to Marshall's point, we're looking at about a 4-year period before all of our existing broadband grants actually can reach the rural communities. And I'm wishing here, but I want a roving career coach that does nothing but HiSET, that has the broadband capability for the rural areas. And you're going to reach many, many people.
Good. Christine, did you have a comment?
Yes, I would just like to add my endorsement. I think it's a wonderful thought and definitely worth trying. Anytime you have an alternative path, it could lead to definitely more successful employment for people. And I certainly would like to add that endorsement because not only is it giving the education, but it's giving them a skill that the whole Department of Labor is about. So in the employment and training can't be beat. Wonderful thought outside of the box.
Excellent. So, to move this along, I think since this does not require a vote, I think what I'll do is, and just say, is there anybody here who would not endorse Jay's plan?
That'd be awkward for all of us at this
I know. That was intentional. All right. So, Jay, you have the endorsement of the board. Please take that and use it wisely, and anxious to hear some updates in the future about this. So,
Thank you all so much.
you bet. Okay. Next, we're going to hear about workforce reentry strategy. So come on up and share your presentation with us.
Good morning, well, good afternoon now, right? Yeah, good afternoon or late morning. My name is William Arnold, and I'm the director of the Office of Reentry. For those of you who aren't aware, the Office of Reentry opened its doors about 102 days ago at the beginning of the fiscal year. We are positioned to be the first state-funded, non-correction affiliated Office of Reentry in the nation. So that sort of puts us in a unique space, if you will, because normally offices of reentry that are statewide are attached to the Department of Correction. So it gives us the ability to not have to deal with some of that baggage, for lack of a better term. Okay. With that, the Office of Reentry, as I said, is state-funded. We received a combination of recurring and non-recurring funding. $250,000 recurring funds and a $1.75 million allocation for this first year. Currently, we have just 2 employees, Sophia and myself, but we are in the process of building a staff of roughly 6 people. So we hope to have our full staff up by the first of the year.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. My name is Sophia, and I'm the Grants Program Manager for the new Office of Reentry. Previously, Labor had been working with special populations as defined under WIOA, which is the Workforce Innovative Act of 2014. As you may already know, WIOA was designed to strengthen and improve the nation's public workforce system and to help get Americans, including youth and those with significant barriers to employment, into high-quality jobs, high-quality jobs and careers, and help employers hire and retain skilled workers. One of the special populations is justice-involved individuals. For the sake of our conversation today, we would define justice-involved individuals as those people currently or have been involved in the criminal justice system. I'm just a little nervous, so y'all bear with me, okay? This can include people who are awaiting trial, convicted of a crime, on probation, under home confinement, incarceration in jail or prison, under community residential supervision, or on parole. We want people who are just as involved not to recidivate. Oops. Sorry. Recidivism is the act of continuing to commit crimes even after having been punished. Recidivism happens when someone repeats criminal behavior even after being incarcerated, fined, or experiencing some other serious consequence within the criminal justice system. One of the most common reasons why people continue to reoffend is the fact that their criminal history makes it extremely difficult for them to go to school, get a good job, or be considered as a productive member of society. Tennessee's recidivism rate is currently at 46% statewide within 3 years of release. This means that about 1 in 2 people will reoffend. Reducing recidivism can generate substantial benefits to Tennessee because it will reduce criminal justice costs to the government, crime victimization costs, and the cost of incarceration to those who recidivate and their families. So to lower our recidivism rate, the Office of Reentry seeks to help Tennesseans who are just as involved have more successful reentry services and experiences.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about how we got to this point. It was in March of 2019 that Governor Bill Lee established the Criminal Justice Investment Task Force, and that was through Executive Order 6. The Criminal Justice Task Force, or the CGITF, as it was called, had a diverse membership of over 100 Tennesseans. The task force included legislators, practitioners, and justice-involved Tennesseans. Most notably was our own Ms. Christine Hopkins, who has established herself as a practitioner in this area. The task force was divided into 4 subcommittees, and though I don't list the 4 subcommittees, the one that actually set up our work was the Education, Workforce Development, and Reentry Subcommittee. From the CGITF, well, my apologies. Okay,
Yeah,
no,
you're
right there. So from the CGITF, there were 23 recommendations. Of those, somebody want to come up here and do this for me? I don't, what happened? Did I turn it off? Please, I think that'll make us all happier. Yeah. All right. Okay, can you advance one? Okay, so there were 3 recommendations from the subcommittee that really affects our work. First was parity and reentry services at jails and state prisons. So let's make certain that we're doing the same thing. And that's been a big issue in terms of us just creating the infrastructure for this work. Sorry. Boy, I tell you, this is a great day, right? Can everybody hear me now? Okay. And with that, when I say the infrastructure, we've been trying to get our arms around reentry. And it's sort of like the Wild Wild West in Tennessee. Everybody's sort of doing their own things. So how do we get the prisons and how do we get the jails on the same page as it relates to reentry, that we're all saying the same thing the same way and getting the best result? A TDOC reentry packet and timeline. We're currently in the process of working on a memorandum of understanding to establish these things with TDOC. Finally, funding and oversight for centers and grants. And with that, we actually have a grant in-house, the Justice Assistance Grant, the JAG grant, that's allowing us the opportunity to really work with businesses across the state in marketing this population.
There are a number of different educational and job skill opportunities available for persons who are incarcerated in our state penitentiary system. The Tennessee Department of Correction, also known as Tdoc, makes HiSET, or the high school equivalency, a attainment possibility, as well as vocational training in such areas as barbering, HVAC, and welding, to just name a few. Also, with partnerships through Tennessee Higher Education Initiative, post-secondary degrees from TBR institutions and 4-year high schools such as Lane College and Lipscomb are also available. WIOA introduced labor to the reentry party, but now labor has more of an active role because employment is widely seen by practitioners, researchers, and policymakers as crucial to successful reentry and reducing the risk of recidivism. We now have a place, and that's the Office of Reentry. Also, meaningful employment can make individuals succeed in the community after release from incarceration because it refocuses their time and efforts on pro-social activities. Improving local reentry outcomes require the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the Tennessee Department of Corrections, labor workforce boards, and other partners to better align and integrate services across the criminal justice system and workforce systems.
Okay, so when the Office of Reentry was established, we were given 3 goals: data tracking of incarcerated individuals, increasing staff capacity, and improving awareness. As I said, we've been trying to get our arms around this. So when we talk about data tracking, the idea is to get more justice-involved individuals using our services. And the way we intend to do that is actually getting them into jobs for TN. So we're currently working on partnerships with TCI, the Tennessee Corrections Institute, and also the Tennessee Department of Corrections to be able to get into the prisons and get these individuals registered in jobs for TN before they are released. Upon getting them in our system, we can then follow up with them and offer them our services across the board from our American Job Centers. So when we talk increasing staff capacity, we are now in the process of working with our American Job Centers to make certain that there is a designated reentry individual in every American Job Center who handles this specifically, in addition to training those individuals. So when we talk infrastructure, again, we're working on establishing and identifying training modules for those individuals so that they can deal effectively with the populations. Finally, we want to improve awareness, so we are going to brand it as Reentry TN. We're working on a media campaign. We've had a number of discussions with Ms. Christine and also with J. Paul Jackson about being representatives about the importance of penetrating businesses to actually work in this capacity. And I just wanted to share with you something this morning that happened. J. Paul reached out to me because he hired an individual who's been out of prison maybe 3 weeks. And this gentleman had thousands of dollars, if you will, in traffic violations. And so J. Paul was able to work with him to get these things taken care of, but then found out that there was a $598 fee just for reinstating your license. So we often talk about barriers. I think we've heard the word barrier in a lot of different conversations. So I saw this as a great opportunity, and I communicated this to him in an email, to continue having conversations with other state agencies about barriers that are in place that we don't realize. So it's this constant discovery process as we go through trying to make the Office of Reentry fit into labor. We found out that just in jobs for TN, for example, there's no way to self-identify as justice involved. So now we're having to make modifications to that. So it's a constant process of, I always tell Sophia, it's never pretty seeing a sausage being made, right? So as we continue to do this, we're constantly uncovering things and realizing exactly where we fit. Okay, I think that was our last slide.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Can y'all hear me? Use this one. All right. Good afternoon. I'm the child of a Baptist preacher. Y'all have to talk back to me. Good afternoon. I am excited to be in partnership with Dr. Arnold and Sophia and under this umbrella, under the Department of Labor, because we have taken what has been seen as a crisis for a very long time and reframed it to opportunity. We've talked about this talk a very long time. Now we are aligning our audio and our video. It's now time for us to walk the walk. So we've heard about what the Office of Reentry is doing. We've heard about today the labor force crisis. In committee today, we talked about assessing what the needs are from the frontline workers. So I wanted to share a little bit about being on the front line before we talk about Project REAP. My introduction into adult education was teaching in the Sumner County Jail. I taught on the men's floor, on the second and third floor, on Tuesdays and Thursdays nights for 4 hours. By day, I was a school counselor. By night, I was working in the jail. So I would tell all my school friends, y'all, I'm going to jail tonight. And they thought I had lost my mind. So I would get there every night, and I'm teaching skills. I'm teaching math, teaching reading, teaching writing essays to individuals that have dropped out of school and have already been told what they could not do. So they asked me the question, Miss Toya, why do you come here? Why are you investing all this time into us? I said, first of all, I'm gonna give you 2 reasons. I said, number one, I work too hard for my stuff. I don't need you breaking out and getting in my stuff and getting it. No, that's number one. And number 2, I'm here with you at night, but during the day, I'm with your children. They're sitting in my offices crying because they miss you. I need to give you everything you need to be successful when you get out of these walls, because that then creates a ripple effect of success. So now, in collaboration with this department and under the arm of adult education, COVID hit, and we got caught with our pants down. The adult education umbrella, we work in the local and county jails. And when the doors closed for COVID, we lost over 65% of our corrections enrollment numbers. So we said, we were gonna try to make packets. This wasn't a sustainable thing. So we started looking like, this is a crisis, but no, this is an opportunity. Now to reframe the way we think about education and training behind the wall, especially in our local and county jails. So we looked at this pathway to freedom and talked about Project REAP. So Project REAP aligns with the governor's initiative in this idea of correctional education and training, and making sure that individuals behind the wall not only have the skills to be successful when they leave, but the opportunity once they do leave. Okay? We can do all of this great work in training. We can give them the skills, we can give them tools, we can give them technology, but what they really need is an opportunity to deploy what they've learned outside of the wall. You can go to the next one. So looking at this tool, we thought initially this is an adult education tool, this is an adult education tool, and I said, no. This could be a workforce system tool, because not only would this provide adult education, but we can offer rehabilitative services, we can offer reentry services, and we can offer workforce training in a blended or completely virtual environment. So after talking to my team and with the support of my assistant commissioner and the deputy commissioner and Commissioner McCord, we coined this project. It's called Project REAP. And REAP stands for Reentry, Employment, and Adult Education. And REAP is intentional. I want you to put a pin right there, okay? Think about REAP. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So the product we're talking about is a tablet-based system that is ran or monitored by a company called American Prison Data Systems, APDS. And it offers a 10.1 Galaxy tab that's encased with military-grade casing. Because working in the correctional facilities, you find individuals are very creative, okay? And if they want to break it, they're going to get in and get the things. They taught me way too much when I was behind the wall. But we give them this graded military-grade casing, and it has a Wi-Fi secure-enabled tablet that is hooked to a charging port, so it can only connect to that tunneled system or on that independent Wi-Fi network that is monitored 24/7. So individuals cannot go to the free web, but through the learning management system, they can customize an education and a training plan for each individual that has a login, okay? So that's the product. So what are the programs that we can offer? We can offer education. We can offer rehabilitation services that are in the cognitive behavioral therapy field. We talked about reentry services. One of the great reentry things that we talked about was financial literacy. Not only how to get money, but how to manage it effectively so we don't go back into survival mode. Because what happens a lot of times in recidivism, individuals can't get employed, and what do? They go back to what they know to do to survive, okay? We talked about workforce development. This tool can offer individuals behind the wall the ability to earn micro-credentials and stackable credentials that show that they are work ready. You can also work with programs like Skills 180 to customize training specifically for industries and employers that partner with this program. There's a learning management system that is available, so you can customize the learning plan for each individual that's a part of this program. There's a professional development window. I love great customer service. We talk about that a lot. And this company offers top-notch professional development opportunities, not only for the individuals providing the services, but those guards that are behind the wall, so they know how to troubleshoot on the ground. And they have a training video for individuals that are using it. It's a great thing to give an individual the tool, but we need to teach them how to use the tool to maximize its effectiveness. And one thing they have launched as of September 30th of this year is a live video classroom option. So even if the teacher can't get to the facility, that teacher can still be seen on the tablet, live teaching each individual. They can see the teacher can see the student, but the students can't engage or interact with each other. So I was very excited about that live classroom option. And it opens up an opportunity for video arraignment could be a possibility. Individuals can meet with their lawyers in a secure environment. And it still be monitored and I'll follow all the safety protocols that are in place behind the wall. The next one. So through the CARES Act funding and with the support of this department, we were able to launch a pilot where we have 3 counties, Blount County, Gibson County, and Grundy County, that have 72 tablets. 24 tablets are at each facility. Currently, I'm excited about the data. Currently, we have 122 participants that are participating and actively engaging in education and workforce training. This is in times of COVID when our staff could not get behind the wall. We were still able to serve 122 individuals that are actively engaged. And I'm not just talking about clicking and watching the screen, but actively interacting with the screen with 83,000 minutes of engagement in education and workforce prep. There has also been assigned 338 cognitive behavioral tools for individual as rehabilitation services. And cognitive behavioral therapy is one of my favorite because if you change your thinking, you change your behavior. And this is one of the things that the Office of Reentry was sharing with us. So I am excited about the investment that we can make now because we can reap the benefits later. For every dollar of investment that we're making in this effort, we're expecting a return on investment and revenue of $5 for every dollar that is spent. Not only that, we have individuals that are actively engaging with their families at home. They're being productive citizens to their communities. And number one, we're not punishing them for what they've done again, because they are people and they are worth the investment. So we'll open up any questions, if you have any questions or comments at this time.
I do. And I don't know where Denise is in here, but ever since I've been on this board, I have been asking for this. And I just want to say, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to congratulate you and wish you the very best. Commissioner, thank you so much. This is long, long awaited. Every time I think about retiring, I think of the 30-something thousand people that are in local jails across the rural counties of Tennessee, and I can't do it. William and Eric Quarles back in the audience knows that my door is always open. Because in the last 14 years that we've been doing rural reentry program in Franklin County, I have seen the positive side, where it's not only a win-win for the person, but for the family, for this state and this nation, every time you put someone out there. So, thank you. I am so proud this department has brought you in. Denise knows how much this is needed, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. What other questions or comments do you have for this group?
I don't think anybody is surprised that I have a comment or a question. But I love everything about this. I loved it when you talked about it at the convening. I was super pumped and excited then, and I remain so. My question is that I think about someone going through the process and being so excited and being released and reentering the population, but being met on the other side still with employers who are not educated on what they have done to be contributing citizens, right? So every single day, I'm having these conversations with employers about bonding and all these different things. And so I heard you say, we're going to get one person in every AJC. And I'm like, you got like 2 or 3 more of those for every AJC that can just focus on the employer, because we've got to change their mindset to make all of this worth it.
And I think it's the collective message that we're all sharing. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited to present to the board, because we can all share the common language and share this common message that these individuals are ready to work. There are opportunities that are available, but we need to take it out of legalese and put it in the language of the individuals that can receive it and understand it.
So I have a question. First of all, thank you. Again, this is remarkable work that we're seeing happen, and I think, again, it's really important. And Christine, I think we all feel your passion towards this, and we're appreciative of your leadership over the many years of pushing the board to do this. And it's a remarkable achievement. The question I have is, and I think Ronnie brings up a good point, but I also want to make a point that I think industry is changing. We're seeing that, well, number one, we have to change because the labor market is so tight right now. And I think we're all willing to say, I think we can all take a chance on these individuals. And my question would be is, and maybe it's this data tracking that you have, but I mean, if I was an employer, I am an employer, and I wanted to know, okay, who's this population in my area that I can go and potentially interview and bring on board and so forth? Is there a way for me to easily do that?
Is this where he is? Yeah, you can actually use Jobs for TN for that purpose, because Jobs for TN actually identifies justice-involved individuals.
Okay.
Just to share a quick story, the Department of Labor took a chance on me. I've been out of prison now for about 19 months. So there's a way to find folks and identify what Nikisha likes to call returning talent, folks who are job ready and who are actually going to be good employees. So there's a way to do it, and we're also working on increasing that as well.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think if the more we can continue to teach the employers the value and how they can benefit from it, and then also make it easier or easy to utilize, I think we'll be able to do very well and help these individuals to be successful.
Yeah, and that's a part of that conversation, again, changing the stigma. So we hope to do that through our media campaign.
So we're kicking off with 1.7 million in non-recurring funds, right? Correct. So, as I mentioned in the Oversight Committee, we expect in the next fiscal cycle for opioid lawsuit funding to come to state and county level. We've got to make that connection so that gap with your non-recurring, we're going to have a statewide committee that's going to adjudicate where approximately 50 or 60% of the opioid settlement money goes. And then counties have 15% latitude with it, and there's a couple other categories there. But your community, county by county nuances, I've got a Tcat a mile and a half from my jail. Sure. And I've got our own state campus 2 miles the other direction. I've got a transportation piece. The sheriff will have additional bailiff requirements to move those in and out. We can't address some of them if we've got the other options Dr. Newsom mentioned. So lots of different nuances, community by community, but there should be a 20-year window for use of these opioid settlement funds. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for this solution for both of you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
You can expect to hear from me a little bit. I advocate for rural Tennessee and specifically Grundy County, and we're always usually behind, but I really am grateful to see that we actually made the list. I appreciate you engaging with our sheriff. I know there's a lot of good work going on. We have in our company, we hired a young man who actually worked in the jail for over a year and a half before he's come out, still with the company. It's been a fantastic hire for the company. I really appreciate the engagement in Grundy County.
Excellent work, excellent report today. Good discussion, and love to see the progress. Good work. Thank you so much. Okay, we're ready for the fiscal update, and Ivan Greenfield is going to be sharing that with us. So tell us about the numbers.
So I received some instructions from Patrice. See if I can, oh, look at that, okay. Thank you, Patrice. So good afternoon. Realizing that I'm the last guy between people getting out for the weekend, I will be brief. So what we're gonna do today is kind of talk a little bit about just a fiscal review of our Title I programs, basically WIOA, Titles 1 through 4. We'll talk overall about funding. In this first quarter, July through September 30th, July 1st through September 30th, we'll look at some overall participant numbers, and then we'll go into some key performance indicators and kind of wrap up with some challenges and opportunities that we see upcoming. At the end of the slide also are some attachments that kind of further detail some of the things that we'll cover here in the slide. So let's get to it. So you'll see here in the first quarter, let me start by saying that ordinarily we would also have DHS's vocational rehab represented here, but we had Discovery where the numbers weren't quite lining up. They operate on a federal fiscal year, we operate on a state fiscal year, and so we're working with them to get those aligned and should be able to report that out in our March 25th next state workforce board meeting. So in the first quarter here, you can see that our overall funding was $102 million combined for adult education and workforce services, with about $14 million in that being in expenditures. Funding expenditures are shown on the state fiscal year. I mentioned that already. And so of the authorized funding, you'll see a net position of 87. Again, it's just the first quarter, and moving on to adult sorry, let's go back. Then we'll look at workforce services. Still went too far. It's touchy, like a trigger. Sorry. Probably shouldn't mention trigger in the state workforce board meeting, but sorry. So looking at workforce services specifically, you'll see that about 85 million of the 102 is allocated to workforce services with 12 million in expenditures. You also notice that I talked about those attachments where you can see additional information about the programs that make up that 85 million and the expenditures tied to those programs. Also, you'll see that last year we had a significant increase in our discretionary funds made up of those two funding initiatives associated with COVID. That's not the case this year. Someone mentioned earlier Waverly, and that's the dislocated worker grant that you see there, that $550,000 that support the Waverly initiative. Looking at enrollment specific to Title I, you'll see that they're kind of flat over the last 4 quarters, around 13,000. We also included a slide that shows the cost, participant-related cost service categories, number of costs towards OJT, incumbent worker training, and things of that nature. That was a request from the board. So that slide kind of lists those costs that make up that 3.6 million that were expended towards participant-specific in the first quarter. And then when we look at AE specifically, you'll see that they have 13.9 of the 102 million with 1.6 in expenditures, 7,000 and just over 7,000 in enrollments in the first quarter. You know, really well paced to outperform last year. And so when we think about some of the key performance indicators, federal, that 11/14, realizing that that's a Sunday, it's 45 days after the quarter end, happened to be on a Sunday. But the numbers weren't available or finalized, I should say, before the board meeting, so we don't have our core measures. We'll provide an update on first quarter and second quarter numbers during, again, the March meeting. You'll see that, and we've talked about this in prior meetings, that we established 12 KPIs for the Title I programs, and Title I and Title II, adult education programs. And each KPI is tracked and reported and reviewed quarterly. And in any issues, they're ranked on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being not meeting expectation, and 5 being what we would call a best practice. And then so what we're seeing is that, and then the next attachment, we have a list of that. What we're seeing is that, so anything that's a 3 or below, we want to be able to provide additional technical assistance and training. In that 3 category, we usually see about 3 areas of the 3 of the 9 areas at or below 80% of their targeted performance. And so we want to provide technical assistance, see to how to get them up to meeting those negotiated targets. So here you see, and this number has kind of changed. Apprenticeship has moved into a 3, and reemployment services have moved into a 1. And what you see is that those metrics that are based on co-enrollments are in desperate need of improvement, which is established by the current market that we're in, where co-enrollments have been down since pandemic. So we're really working to get those numbers up. We're moving in the right direction, but it's going to take some time. So let's talk a little bit about challenges. We talked about flat enrollments. We talked about co-enrollments being below performance. And really just working with those local boards to strengthen their numbers. This is an issue that we're seeing a growing concern of sustainability, where we're seeing local boards requesting additional dollars. Also, there's some concern around, as they strive to increase performance, you'll see even more of a funding deficit behind that. So just really working with those local boards on how we can help them to promote sustainability. So the way the structure is designed is that, you know, local boards receive X number of funds within what's called within state allocations, and they get like 2-year contracts. And what we're seeing is that ordinarily they would have to expend about 80% and have up to 20% carryover. We're seeing that that carryover is kind of diminishing, which kind of puts them in behind on that first quarter of the following year, and then they're needing to have what's called gap funding as a result of that. And that's increasing behind that practice. So it's, again, just working with the boards to help them understand the budgeting and help them to figure out how we can improve on operating efficiency from that perspective. On the plus side there, we're looking at opportunities. We continue to, as they talked about, collaboration and partnerships. That's going to help us to extend and expand the resources that we have to better serve our customers. And then we talk about systems administrations and integrations. VAJC, a lot of you have heard a lot about. It's been a really good tool in that it helps individuals who access this to kind of virtually be assessed and kind of think about where they want to go to. It's a wizard that kind of, based on the way they respond to the questions, then they're directed to receive further things customized to what they've submitted in that wizard. And we actually applaud this in that we've had another state that reached out to us to want to know more about that. It was Nevada. But we've served 8,900 individuals with this platform this past quarter, and we feel that this is supporting our priority of creating a simple and effective engagement experience. So, good thing there. Smart Simple is our grants management system that we will be implementing. Right now, the date is set for December 17th. We feel that that's going to help us in the way that we manage and promote effectiveness and efficiency around our grant funds administration. And that's in line with our priority to, how we're looking at creating dashboards and other report cards, key metrics that help us to measure the effectiveness of the system. And then last on the list, Coursera. We had an adventure with Coursera. This is an online platform that provides for online training, whether it's, certifications or leading to higher credentials. And then we utilize that in 3 ways, to reach to the job seeker, to help skill them up, to connect them to work better. We use it as incentives to employers. We offer them licenses that help them to either upskill or design customized training that helps move an employee to a higher position. And then also looking at staff development, right? We intend to work with our HR department to kind of set up some standardized training across our teams, and that's in line with another priority of ours of having a well-trained workforce. And so I think we're kind of moving, as far as system administration and integration, we see some good things happening there. And as I said, I would be brief. Questions?
All right, questions for Ivan?
Excellent.
You like that, don't you? No, that was a good summary. It really was, and so thorough, and appreciate that, and appreciate the reference to the KPIs and challenges and hurdles. Any other questions or comments for Ivan? Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Okay. The weekend is upon us. If you pay attention to your agenda, just please make a note of the meetings that we have planned for 2022. Please go ahead and mark those on your calendar so you can get those locked in, and then any other things that come up, you will already have those blocked out so you don't have conflicts with these meetings moving forward. And then also know that while the team does a nice job preparing all of this paperwork and everything, next year we're going to try to do it without paper. So if you're the kind of person who needs that paper ahead of time, print it before you come is what I'm going to tell you, and save the work for this group who does they get it all to you ahead of time. Hopefully you're able to review it before you come to the meetings. We're going to make it easier on that team and be a little green and not produce as much paperwork. So if you need it, print it, bring it with you. Otherwise, we'll just continue to allow that to be in electronic format. Okay, I think that's it. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved in a second?
Second.
I don't think anybody's going to oppose that, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.